remember it because they had me start out by ordering what I thought was the most important priorities in my life. And I ordered them God, my family, my health, business, and I can't remember what the fifth one was. Then I took the quiz, and then it told me based off of my answers how I scored and what my priorities actually were. It told me that I prioritized business as number one. My family was number two, but like a much smaller piece of the pie than business was. And then God was third, and it was about half the size of my family pie slice. And I was like, whoa, this is not at all what I thought I was doing as far as my priorities go.
I'm thrilled you're here with us on the Christian Clinician, where we join faith with evidence-based medicine to revitalize your health and renew your faith. Get ready for real and informative conversations with wellness experts and Christian scholars alike to gain a deeper understanding of our faith, explore our God-given purpose, and discover how the strength of our relationship with God can impact our health here on earth.
Welcome to another episode of the Christian Clinician. I'm your host, Dr. Tanya Paynter, and we're going to be talking about practical steps to take to begin making Sabbath a daily habit, a part of your daily walk with the Lord. So I wanted to share a little bit about my personal testimony today, and how I came to realize that this was an issue in my life, and also the things that I started doing to start working on this. And I say start working on it because this is an ongoing process, right? This is a part of us refining ourselves, of the Lord refining us, of trying to walk closer with Christ. So this is an ongoing issue for me as I work on trying to reprioritize my life around the Lord and what that looks like in day-to-day life. So we'll be going through this together, and I will give you the hints of what I've done so far to help you implement this. But I think this is really a foundational piece to our walk with the Lord. And so we all need to figure out how to implement this in our own lives. And I think that might look a little bit different for each of us. So to start with, one of the things that I really started thinking about, and this happened a couple of probably about 5 years ago now. I took a test that helped me to determine what my priorities were. So the test, and I looked for it because I wanted to make it available for you to also take this test. It was very eye-opening to me, and it stuck in the back of my mind for years afterwards. But I can't find it. I have no idea where it is. I can't even find my original test, but I remember it because they had me start out by ordering what I thought was the most important priorities in my life. And I ordered them God, my family, my health, business, and I can't remember what the fifth one was, but there was something else. Maybe it was like relaxation time or something like that. And so that's how I thought that my priorities were based off of what I believed about myself and how I set up my days. Then I took the quiz. It was like a questionnaire, and then it told me based off of my answers how I scored and what my priorities actually were. And so I took it, and I remember, and there was a pie chart, and I remember it telling me how big of a priority each of these five areas was. And it really hurt to see that God was like a small part of the pie. So based off of what I held, how I answered the questions of what was most important, how I prioritized my day, what I spent most of my time on, what I spent most of my resources on, such as finances and, those kinds of things. And based off of the answers that I gave, it told me that I prioritized business as number one. My family was number two, but like a much smaller piece of the pie than business was. And then God was third, and it was about half the size of my family pie slice. And then health was actually below that, and then again, whatever the fifth category was. And I was like, whoa, this is not at all what I thought I was doing as far as my priorities go. And this test really used time, like what I spent my time during the day, on a regular basis. So it broke it down into day and week. And so what did I spend most of my time during each day? And then how much time I dedicated per week to different activities, because we don't do, church was in there as part of my God time, but that was done on Sundays. And how much time did I spend like reading the Bible or in prayer or whatever? And then also it asked about finances, like what do I spend my money on? And what am I willing to invest in? Do I tithe regularly? And so based on all of that, my priorities were completely skewed compared to what I thought they were. And so that really opened up my eyes of this idea of how we're prioritizing our day. And when I say how we, I mean how I. And it really helped me to understand that I was not prioritizing it in the way that I held those priorities in my head. So, one of the first things to start doing with that is just doing something similar. I went online last night looking, knowing that I was going to record this podcast today. I went online to look for a test that potentially could be helpful in doing that. I couldn't find anything that was even remotely close to what I had done. So, unfortunately, I have no resources for you on that aspect of things. Maybe you can find something different. And if you do and you find one that you liked that gave you some really good insight, please share it in the comments so that other people can listen to that or to take it for themselves. Because I think this is really important. We can think that our priorities are one thing, and we can feel like we hold these things very dear to us. And I'm not saying they aren't, because God was very dear to me when I took this test, but clearly my priorities did not reflect how I felt about Him. So I wasn't engaged in the things that I should have been doing to really show that God was a priority for me. And I still find myself, like, I think about that test all the time in the ways that I think I'm prioritizing my day. And then I realize, I'll kind of go over my day at the end of the day and say, wow, I think I talked to God like one time today. Or, I haven't spent any time in the Bible for the last 2 weeks. Things have been happening. What's been going on in my life that God was like the last thing that was on my mind, during those 2 week periods. So it helps me to really like, I keep doing this reality check of, all right, am I actually living out what I say, what I claim my priorities are? And I think that's one of the best things that we can do. And sometimes, like, it's eye opening. And sometimes it's probably not. Like, there's probably, you might be one of those that are practicing what you really believe your priorities are. And that's amazing. Again, like, share how you're doing that and tips that you do to make sure that this is something that stays a priority. Because quite honestly, like, I struggle sometimes as much as I love the Lord and I'm on fire for Him. Like, I spend all day researching and doing, right? I spend all day doing and researching about God that sometimes, like, I feel like I'm so immersed in learning about Him that I forget it has nothing to do with my relationship with Him. Like, sure, I'm learning about theology and that's kind of shaping my beliefs and understandings, but I'm spending zero relational time with Him. And, that it just, our head knowledge is not the same as our experiential, as our knowledge of Him, our experiences with Him, right? That can only happen in relationship. And so that's really where I've started to understand that how we're practicing the experience of God, our relationship with Him, is how we're experiencing Sabbath. And the more I fall away from that relational aspect with the Lord, the more I realize, like, I'm getting swept up in business concerns, financial concerns, like do concerns. And then suddenly I start feeling anxiety starting to come up. And that is now my first indication that something is off. Like, I'm experiencing anxiety. What am I anxious about? So then I have to take a step back. Okay, what have I been doing? Where's my focus been? And how much time have I spent with the Lord? And realizing, oh, and that's where, I mentioned the 2 weeks without Bible study. Like, that just happened to me. I realized that as the school year was winding down and as summer was approaching and we had all kinds of stuff that was happening, I was trying to fit all of my business and podcast and research and, client communications in the short window of time that I had outside of doing the extra school activities and things for my kiddos as we're wrapping up the school year. And God just got shoved to the wayside. And I didn't even realize this was happening. Like this is the struggle, right? And so once we start to recognize, okay, the anxiety is telling me something is off. I haven't been spending relational time with the Lord. The minute that I prayed for forgiveness, I repented and I started making my morning Bible study a priority again, like the anxiety has gone away and my sleep has been more solid and I'm not stressed or worried about the things that I was stressing and worrying about before. And so it's just the more that we can start becoming aware of how frequently we're engaged in God activities or relational activities, I should say, and non-relational activities. Now, that being said, we can run errands and relationally be involved with God, right? If we're running errands with the Lord, like that's relationship time. You can, like I do that with my mom all the time. We'll go shopping together and we have to go to the grocery store. Well, we're doing it together. It's fun bonding time. You can do that with God. You can do that while you're driving. You can do that while you're doing dishes. So we can still be doing all of the things, all the adulting, all the chores and whatever else. We can still do that, but we can do it with the Lord. We can do it in prayer. We can do it in worship, but we have to be intentional about including him in the activities that we're doing through our day. So here are a couple of the things that I started doing that helped me to kind of first of all, identify where my priorities were and how to continuously work on identifying how those priorities are changing because they shift from day to day and season to season and all of that. And so the more we can be aware of how we're prioritizing things and where God falls on that spectrum and making sure that he's always at the top, that's going to be kind of key in experiencing that Sabbath peace that we're wanting, right? That relational aspect, that resting in the Lord. So the first is to just evaluate the way that you're prioritizing your days. I found, that online quiz that really helped me to understand. You can just sit down and make a list out of the things that you're doing on a regular basis, kind of what your day looks like, how it's structured, and then how many things in there are around the Lord. How many things are spent with God? Do you even have time that you set aside every day for him? Is he the first thing or is he the last thing? And so one of the questions that I'm asking myself now is, am I organizing my day around time with God or am I organizing time with God around the rest of my day? And up until recently, the last couple of weeks, I was organizing my time with God around my day. And then he would often fall to the wayside. Now I'm being very intentional about trying to organize my day back around the Lord, and then everything else kind of falls into place around that. So really being intentional about putting him first is really important, especially as we're entering summertime. And for those of us with kids still at home, like this is really easy to kind of get sidetracked because my kids and I get up around the same time in the morning. So instead of having my nice quiet morning time after the kids have gone to school, like they're still here. And it is so easy to get sucked into activities with them or, whatever it is that it's, pretty soon it's most of the way through the day and I haven't spent any time with God. So as you have your list of, kind of where God falls in all of the things that you have to do, are you involving God during those daily things? So are you, when you're doing your routine stuff, your errands, your chores, whatnot, are you actually involving him? Not just listening to a podcast or worship music about him or reading a book about him, but actually speaking to and listening for his responses. Like, is that something that you're doing actively? And again, there's no judgment here because this is something that as I was going through this list, for this podcast, like these were the things that I was like, what am I doing? And how am I not doing these things? And I so often, like I said, I'll get wrapped up in the research and forget that I didn't spend any time with him. I've just been learning about him, or I've been listening to worship music all day. So you kind of feel like you're there. except that I haven't talked to him at all since this morning. And so those are the things like the nuances of, and I think the enemy likes to make us busy. And then we have the worship music in the background. And so you kind of just have that feeling, I know you know what I'm talking about, just that feeling of the worship music, and you're just enjoying yourself as you're doing your chores. And there's no God actually involved in that activity. And I think that the enemy likes to do that, where we think that we're, worshiping him, but really I'm just listening to music that happens to have God lyrics to it. Like there's no worship involved when I've got that music on in most of the time. And again, this is my personal experience. I'm not saying that you are experiencing this, but if you do find yourself resonating with that a little bit, like that's something for us to take a look at and just kind of figure out, okay, how do we incorporate God more into these routines? Um, so then the other thing is, so time and money, right? Those were the two categories that that this online quiz was helping me figure out my priorities. They did it based off of questions around my time and my money. And so consider tracking your days for the next couple of days. If you can't figure out like where that priority falls, or if you're doing the things that you think are priorities like I did, in order to really help you see, is this an accurate picture of like, I think it's one way in my head, is this what it comes across in reality? And so then consider for each activity or for each day, you write down the activity that you're doing. And for each activity, you note how much time you're spending it in, say, 15 or 30-minute increments, whatever works for you. And then at the end of that time period, you add up the total time for each of those activities and then organize it from highest to lowest. And so that will be your priorities. So this would include chores, like you could just do general categories, right? How much time did I spend on chores? How much time did I spend on errands? How much time did I spend on cooking? How much time did I spend in the Bible or in prayer? And it might add up to more than, 24 hours, because we can multitask. So I could be doing chores and praying at the same time. So that counts. But only if you're actually doing both of those things, right? So, but then looking at each category, however you want to break your categories down. And as we've tracked our time, we can see how much time did I actually spend doing this? Like, I think I'm praying a lot, but if it's only for a total of 45 minutes a day, just like in 5-minute increments throughout the day kind of thing, it's like, is 45, does that really reflect how much time I think I'm spending on it? Is 45 minutes out of the day actually a good number? I don't know. You and the Lord can be the judge of that. But it will at least help to bring some awareness to how much time we feel like we're spending versus how much time we're actually spending, which are completely different things. If you've ever tracked your day, like I've done this for a business, like effectiveness on how to organize your days to make the most of your time, and where the time sucks, like how much time do you spend checking emails or getting lost in Facebook or whatever. You realize as you start tracking your time how much time we actually waste on things that don't make any difference for anything. And then we think that we don't have time for certain activities, when in reality, if we were just a little bit more aware of the ways that we can get lost in some of these meaningless activities, we actually could have an hour or two. Like for me, it was Facebook. Like I would go on Facebook to answer, a question in my group or something. And then suddenly an hour later, I realized, wow, I just got done wasting like 45 minutes scrolling, because that's what we do, right? So as we become more aware of how we're spending our time, we become much more cognizant of it. And then when we feel ourselves getting sucked in, like now I can recognize I'm getting sucked into something within 10 minutes, which is still a long time, but compared to the hour I used to spend, like there's improvement there. So it's slow going, but it's there. And it's all because I'm trying to be much more mindful about how I'm spending the minutes of my days when I feel like I don't have time to do any of those things. So that would be a good way of helping to evaluate how you're prioritizing your time. And then moving into step two, or step two and step one can be done together, but prayer, right? Involving the Holy Spirit in the process of learning how to Sabbath with the Lord. Ask Him for a change of heart. Ask Him to help bring more awareness to what your priorities are. ask for help in figuring out how to reprioritize things if necessary, or if not, that he would continue to motivate you to do the good things that we want to do. Because, like Paul says, like, why do I do the things I don't want to do and I don't do the things I do want to do? Like, it's human nature for us to fall into these traps of unproductive time that just eats away, and then suddenly we feel all harried because we have all these things to do, when in reality we had plenty of time to get it all done, except that our human mind just kind of wanders, and God oftentimes will fall to the wayside. So again, personal experience, not saying that's you, but if you do resonate with that, like, yes, it's the thing. And then something else that I find really helpful, and this is something that I actually do for patients as well, when they need to take a minute to just check in with their body, how their body is feeling, check in with their breathing, how they've been breathing through the day, what their stress levels are like, right? Trying to bring more attention, more awareness around their physical body. I have them put a dot on their computer screen or whatever it is that they look at a lot, right? Whether if they spend all their time in their car, maybe a little dot or a sticky or a sticker or something on, something on their dashboard or whatever, where every time you see that dot or that sticker, it reminds you, oh, yeah, I should check in on whatever it is that I've assigned for that person. So in this situation, that dot or that sticker is to remind you to check in with the Lord, right? And so every time you see that sticker, and maybe you have like the same sticker and you put it in four different places, like the kitchen window and the refrigerator and your car steering wheel and your computer, right? Whatever you spend a lot of time on. Maybe you're on your phone. Actually, that's a really good idea. I should maybe put that on my phone. But whenever you see that sticker, it is a reminder for you of, hey, have you talked to the Lord recently? If not, why don't you check in with him, see how things are going? And it doesn't have to be one of those things where we're sitting down for 30 minutes of uninterrupted time. It can just literally be like, oh, I'm walking to the car and I'm going to check in with the Lord. God, please, just protect me as I go through my errands or whatever. Or, hey, sometimes my prayers are just, I love you, God. Thank you for being my Lord and for loving me and the mess that I am. And, whatever. It's just, and what I've found as I continue, so again, you don't use it, you lose it, but it's an ongoing battle. And there are some periods of time where it's like, I will literally wake up in the middle of the night talking to God. Like, just the thoughts in my head are aimed at God and I'm actually praying while I'm asleep. And these are the days, this happens when I'm really intentional about speaking to the Lord throughout my day. And that always brings to mind, like, that our mind should be focused day and night on the word, on the Lord. And then of course there are the times that I drift away, as in the last few weeks. So what we just want to do is start developing that habit of speaking with him. And so then we start, like, every time we grab our keys and we head out the door, we start thinking, hey, like, I'm going to pray. And then it becomes very habitual. And he's just a part of every day, every aspect. And so then the first thing that pops into your head when you're feeling anxious or stressed is, I want to talk to God about this. Like, that's the first thing that will pop into your mind. That's where we want to be. We don't want him to be the last thing that we're thinking of as we're rushing around trying to figure things out. We want that to be the first place that we go, get that sense of peace and calm that he can only bring us. And then we move forward and our mind is more clear. We're not as reactive as we had been. And we can use him as a guidance because we're tuned into what he has to say. And I've had, again, periods of where I've experienced that, few and far between, because, again, it's a struggle, but it's really wonderful to just turn to him first and foremost, and to remember, like, he's always there and he's just waiting for us to talk to him. And then the last thing is, again, being really intentional about setting aside daily time with God. And this is set aside for him specifically, not just, praying as we're doing our other things, but this is time with just you and him, and just spending time with him, as opposed to, the worship music or the podcast or the theology things or the book that you're reading on theology or whatever it happens to be. This is just time with you and him and nobody else, and the Bible and prayer. And it's just a good way to start the day. So if that's not something that you're in a regular habit with, or you even thinking about doing that sets you a little bit of panic because you're like, I don't have time. Like, I don't know where I'd fit that into my day. then that would be a really good exercise. And again, start with prayer. Ask the Holy Spirit to lead you into where this would fit best for you and your circumstances and your relationship with the Lord. And then just pray that He would make that time available and help you to see it and recognize it and then utilize it for that purpose. And so sometimes if it's just too overwhelming to even think about setting aside, 15, 20 minutes, then start there. Start with the prayer. The Holy Spirit will answer and He will give you that time. If you truly have that heart desire to deepen your relationship in that way, He will make that happen for you. And then if you say, all right, well, I'm going to do this, it sounds great. I think 20 minutes before I get started with my day, like I'll sit down, have a cup of coffee, and you feel comfortable with 20 minutes, then I might challenge you to see if you take that 20 minutes and you add an extra 10 to it. What's going to happen if you go a little bit outside what you feel like you're comfortable giving the Lord? And that's where the sacrifice comes in, right? That is the living sacrifice that we can give to the Lord, Romans 12, 1 and 2, right? And so if we can give Him just a little bit more time than we're comfortable with, we don't have to. This isn't a mandatory thing. But what I've done that before where I've spent more time than I felt comfortable with based on my list of things to do. And I said, all right, Lord, I'm uncomfortable with this amount of time, but I feel like this is important for you, for me, for us as a relational thing. I'm going to dedicate an hour today. And I'm going to rely on you to help me get all of the things on my list done. And so I would start and just feel His peace and just enter into that Sabbath time with Him. And wouldn't you know it, all of my things will always get done. So I would really encourage you to try that a few times. Just really be open to sacrificing some time and being okay. Like if you don't get everything done, you've spent that time with the Lord and that is not wasted time. So hopefully some of those ideas, you don't have to do all of them. You don't have to do any of them. But those are the things that I started doing that really helped me learn how to walk in that Sabbath time with the Lord through my day. And again, I am far from perfect with it. This is an ongoing thing. I know I'm going to struggle with it for probably my entire life. But the good things that I'm noticing as I'm doing this is that when I start feeling, I'm not sleeping as well, I'm starting to feel more anxious, or, what's up with my mood lately? Why am I so crabby right now? Where's this mood swing coming from? As I start to recognize those, I always run through my list of, all right, well, food, okay, I haven't eaten for a while or whatever, or oh, I had some alcohol last night. This is probably a side effect from, me being crabby post alcohol intake. So sure, I'll go through my physical list, but if I've gone through my physical list and there's no explanation for it, then I'll turn to, all right, what's my day been like? How have I been, communing with the Lord? Am I practicing Sabbath well? And a lot of times I'll find that I've had my own deficits in how I've been going about my days. So hopefully those are helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, if you have something that you've done or a trick that you use or ways that have helped you grow in your relationship with the Lord, as far as spending daily time with Him and just really learning how to be relational with Him throughout your day, I would love for you to share that in the comments for the rest of us to learn from, because I'm always looking for new ways to engage with God that I haven't thought of, and iron sharpens iron, right? So we can support each other in that path. One last thing that I would request from you, if you have a moment and you've been listening to the podcast for a while, I would really love if you would take a second to just do a quick review for me. I've got like 1 or 2 reviews right now, which is great and I'm very thankful for, but I do know that algorithm searches and things like that will help to spread the podcast further if there are more reviews. So if you could spare just a quick minute and let me know what you think about the podcast, any topics that you'd like to hear, any ways that I can improve it, I would love to hear your feedback so that I can make this even better and help to reach more people. So thank you for that. And I hope that you found this Sabbath cycle helpful. Next week, we're going to be talking to the authors of Sabbath Gospel, a new book coming out that's going to talk a little bit more about what we've been focused on the last couple of episodes. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be wonderful. And I hope you have a blessed day. Thank you for
for listening to our podcast. Please subscribe for more topics like this, where we focus on bringing our faith and health together for a whole you. If you have questions around your health or your faith, including doubts and struggles with what you've been taught about God, we'd love to have you send us an email at support@psalmmedical.com.